Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast broadcast. I want to talk to you about something I have been pursuing as a strategy. So, I'm 27 now, and in my, business ventures and ambitions, I find it hard to figure out what I should do or different goals I should have, because things are very open-ended. For example, and I can just say from my own personal experience and from the experiences that I've seen and read from others, is that many people that start a business or start businesses or start whatever it is they start doing, it morphs, it changes. And as it changes over time, a lot of times goals will change and strategies will change because you learn, right? Like you only learn you got to learn from doing. And as you learn from doing, then you start to see opportunities, you start to see where things work and don't work, and that can have an effect on where you want to go. And as you learn things along the way, then opportunities will open up in that way as well. So for me, I'm trying to figure out a lot of times what is at least a goal I can have that can help me reach my other goals. Because I get stuck sometimes trying to figure out, should I focus on the money, right? Should I chase the money? Because sometimes I feel like there have been many times in the past year, even probably 2 years, where I'm working so much sometimes, where I'll sleep for 4 hours a night, 5 hours a night, and I just keep working, where I'm like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? And that is something I have questioned myself about a lot. And it goes into a little bit of the self-doubt I talked about last podcast. So I've been listening to Gary Vee. I go on and off of listening to him. And he recently has been on a kick about expenses. Basically, one of his ideas, or something he talks about a lot, is that a lot of people can have the life they want to have if they just cut down on the unnecessary bullshit. So, for example, if you want a easier job, or if you want like an easier life, right? If you want to come home and watch those Netflix shows, right? If you want to make sure that you get that 2 weeks vacation every year, or if you want to make sure that you can go to all of your kids' baseball games or activities, these are his examples. Then he says, well, a lot of people can just take a pay cut, work a job that pays less, but all you got to do is you got to sacrifice some of the material comforts, right? So, okay, maybe you drive around that old car for longer, right? Maybe you don't go out and buy, the extra extravagances that you were buying. Maybe you don't buy so many overpriced coffees at Starbucks, right? We're all guilty of that. Don't get me wrong. The Starbucks coffee, I go with a regular black coffee. It's about $2. Well, if you get one of those a day, every single day, that's roughly $60 a month. If somebody walked up to you and said, hey, do you want to pay $60 a month for a coffee subscription? Chances are you'd probably say, nah, count me out, right? But we do it because it's convenient and it's there and it's not that expensive. But if you say, no, I'm just going to go ahead and make my own coffee, you might save, say you save 50 cents or $1 a day. That's $30 a month, right? Take that to bigger things, bigger purchases, right? Like maybe you decrease how much spending you do on just extra BS. You go to the store and you just only buy things you're going to use. So that's his idea. And when I say his idea, he didn't make it up, but it's something that he's been focusing on more lately, is managing your expenses. And that got me thinking. As somebody who's in the entrepreneur space and who faces self-doubt, who faces anxiety and uncertainty, and who wants to, I know that I need to have more money away just for an emergency. I like to tell people I'm not saving for retirement. I am saving for investment. I'm saving for emergencies, right? Like that's what I want. I want enough money in the bank so I have the freedom to make the moves I need to make and not feel constrained. So I think to myself, what can I do? Like I said, I a lot of times I'm unsure about the path I should take. Well, I've been listening to Gary Vee say that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't really spend a lot of money. I don't, I buy decent food, but I haven't gone out to eat I almost never go out to eat. I probably go out to dinner probably twice a month now. Big decrease. So I'm saving money there. I hardly ever buy clothes throughout the year. Don't do that. A couple things I do though is, I spend a lot of money on my gym membership. Now here's the thing, is that the gym is an important part of my life, right? I work out every single day, and my schedule as an entrepreneur is very, it can be crazy. Like I can be on ones. I have had so many schedule changes this last year where I went from like sleeping at different hours of the day, taking multiple naps. My schedule is like the inverse of what it used to be. So I also need a gym membership that is flexible on time, right? And for me, it's like, okay, one problem with going with a cheaper gym membership is that most of them don't stay open 24 hours. And so, okay, they don't stay open 24 hours, or maybe they're lower quality gyms, more people go there. So then the times you can go, maybe it's overcrowded, it's packed, maybe you got to worry about your car getting broken into. So there's all these things, and I'm like, okay, I go to the gym so much, I want to pay a premium to go to a nice gym. Okay, so I'm like, I want to keep my gym membership, right? What else do I want to do? I want to make sure I can still pursue my other things I want to pursue. Like I still want to go out dancing on the weekends. That's about $10 a weekend, not including gas. And I still want to be able to do some Taekwondo stuff. Maybe go to a tournament a couple times a year. But at the same time, I'm paying, I've got a car payment. I've got an apartment. I pay rent for an apartment. And all the expenses that go with that, like electricity and cable and internet. So I'm trying to figure out, how can I put myself in the best position to succeed and still pursue these other things that really make life worth living? Because I work so much that, I need something to help breathe life into me except work. So I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll do what Gary Vee has been saying. I'll cut my expenses in terms of renting and living. So I am deciding, as a guy in his mid to late 20s, to move in with a relative and rent a room. I won't say which relative, but a relative. I'm going to rent a room and pay half of the cost that I'm paying now for rent. And what will that allow me to do? That will allow me to save a ton of money every month. Okay? That will allow me to save more than half, because even though I'll pay half the rent, I, will not have to pay as much extra for, utilities and everything like that. And so I can also bring some value to the household in general. Hey everybody, do you want to record your own podcast like me? Well, Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. That's right, mofos. It's easy. Check it out. Now, the concept of cost control here, I think, is extremely valuable and important to not just me, but I think a lot of people who might be in a similar position as me. So I'm trying to reduce my expenses as much as possible so that I can not only pursue hobbies that I enjoy, which are, only a fraction of my time, but also invest in myself and my other business opportunities. And this is something that I think, so I have been following a large swath of successful individuals. Two of the business-minded guys I follow are Gary Vee and this guy named Grant Cardone. I don't listen to him a lot, but sometimes I do catch some of his stuff. I've read several of his articles. Very, he's a little too real estate based for me for what I'm doing, but still has some interesting insights. And Gary Vee always talks about cutting expenses. He's like, listen, move in, get a bunch of roommates and start your business and just like live like a minimalist for however many years until you give it a shot, right? Like don't blow up your expenses so that way you can't do shit that you want to do. So that's a big motivator. Another thing was interesting was listening to Grant Cardone talk about how he has a strategy that he's laid out that I heard on a YouTube video where he laid out a strategy of saving 40% of your income per year to end up getting to like $100,000. And his strategy was get to $100,000 and once you get $100,000 in the bank, then make a move, right? So, his thing was once you get $100,000 in the bank, then start looking to invest that money and start figuring out how to get a return. Now, I think that is kind of, I like that strategy. I like that to a point, right? That really helped give me some clarity because I'm thinking, okay, I've been hearing Gary Vee talk about, cut your expenses. And I'm like, okay, it's finally getting through. Then I hear Grant Cardone say, don't just cut your expenses, here's a percentage to cut. And Cardone's theory is cut your expenses to where you're saving 40%. Now, he didn't just say cut your expenses. He's a big increase your sales as well. But for me, in the short term, I can't increase sales to such a drastic extent. But what I can do is cut expenses. So while I'm trying to increase sales in business activity, I can also decrease my spending and expenses so I can try to save as much as possible and hit a large monetary goal. His goal of $100,000 in the bank, I think, is really good for a couple reasons. Well, I think it's good because once you get that money in there, clearly you could start looking to invest it. And I think that's probably a good number. I don't know where he got it from. It just sounds good. Anyway, the other thing I like about it is the psychological benefit because it gives you something really hard to aim for. For example, when I quit my job at my first consulting gig, and everything I was looking up on the internet was like save 1 year's salary, save at least a year's salary. And that was about it. That was kind of like the consensus is make sure you have like 1 year's worth of living, ready to go. And then listening to Cardone, he's like, no, get $100,000 in the bank. Right now, for some people, $100,000 might be a year's salary, but for most people, it's not. And I really like that advice because, like I said, one, I think it does make sense financially, and two, I think it's a good psychological goal to say, okay, I need to get to $100,000. Now, how can I get there? So that kind of setting a goal at that point has kind of helped me say, oh, I need to work backwards now, and now I'm implementing Cardone's and Gary Vee's advice of cut expenses, and not only cut expenses, but I'm trying to get to that 40% number, where I could put away about 40% of my income. And so I'm looking at ways I can increase my, income and at the same time decrease expenses to meet that target in the next, couple years. And like I said, part of that strategy in the short term is going to be to regroup, go rent the room, save up as much money as possible, work extremely hard, and see what I can put away. But like I said, it's a balance, because you don't want to grind for a year or two to the point of suicide, right? So you got to kind of, you got to have some release valves, which is why I think it's important to do some things that you enjoy. Now, I could just be rationalizing my behavior, right? It's very possible that I am saying these things about having things that you enjoy doing just because I don't want to give them up. But I do sincerely believe that it is important. I have felt a huge difference in my quality of life since I started just taking a 1 day a week Chinese class and going out once a week. I go out once a week and I go, take a Chinese class once a week. And just doing those two things give me something extra to look forward to every week. It's been priceless. So that's a new strategy that I am going to take going forward. And I think if anybody is looking for a strategy for the new year, then it is something to look into. Look into some of Gary Vee's ideas about cutting costs. Look into Grant Cardone's video. I don't know what it is, which one it is. If I could find it, that would be great. About saving 40% of your earnings and getting to a goal of $100,000 before you make a big move of investing somewhere. And I think it's pretty good advice. So that's all I've got to say for this episode. Remember, guys, let's get our shit together.